The silence at our Christmas dinner table felt heavier than the snow piling up outside our Chicago suburban home. Mom pushed her mashed potatoes around her plate, while Dad carved the turkey with mechanical precision. "Between jobs again," Mom sighed, glancing toward the empty chair where my sister Sarah should have been sitting. Dad nodded grimly. "Can't keep steady work, that girl." I kept decorating the miniature tree centerpiece, hoping to avoid another painful conversation about Sarah's latest employment failure. The TV announcer's voice suddenly filled our dining room. Breaking news from CNN. Mystery tech founder revealed as local woman. I looked up from the tiny ornaments scattered across our dining table just as the television screen filled with a familiar face. My fork froze halfway to my mouth. That was Sarah. My unemployed, supposedly directionless sister Sarah was standing behind a podium, wearing a sharp navy blazer I'd never seen before, addressing a room full of reporters and investors. 28-year-old Sarah Mitchell has been secretly developing revolutionary AI-powered job matching software for the past 2 years, the CNN reporter continued. Her company, CareerBridge Technologies, received a $50 million valuation in yesterday's Series A funding round. Mom's wine glass slipped from her fingers, shattering against her dinner plate. Dad's carving knife clattered onto the serving tray. The sound echoed through our suddenly silent dining room like a gunshot. "This has to be some kind of mistake," Dad whispered, reaching for the television remote with trembling hands. He turned up the volume just as the reporter began detailing Sarah's background. Mitchell worked 18-hour days from a converted warehouse space in downtown Chicago, building what industry experts are calling the most sophisticated employment algorithm ever created. Her software has successfully matched over 15,000 job seekers with employers in its beta testing phase. I stared at the screen, watching my sister field questions from reporters with the confidence of someone who'd been doing this for years. When had she learned to speak so eloquently about market disruption and user acquisition metrics? When had she transformed from the girl who couldn't hold down a waitressing job to this poised tech executive? "The warehouse space," I muttered, remembering all those times Sarah had claimed she was networking or exploring opportunities when we asked about her whereabouts. She'd always carried herself like someone with somewhere important to be, but we'd assumed it was just another dead-end interview. Mom stood up abruptly, knocking over her chair. "That's impossible. She's been unemployed for months. She borrows money from us for groceries." Her voice cracked with a mixture of confusion and wounded pride. "Look at her, Linda," Dad said softly, pointing at the television. "Does that look like someone who needs grocery money?" On screen, Sarah was explaining how her platform used machine learning to analyze both employer needs and candidate potential beyond traditional resume metrics. She spoke about creating opportunities for people who'd been overlooked by conventional hiring processes. Her passion was unmistakable, radiating through the camera with an intensity I'd never witnessed during our family dinners. "I developed this technology because I believe everyone deserves meaningful work that matches their true capabilities," Sarah told the interviewer. "Too many talented people fall through the cracks of outdated hiring systems." The irony wasn't lost on me. While our parents had been lamenting her inability to find steady employment, Sarah had been creating solutions for thousands of other people facing the same challenges. But why hadn't she told us? Why let us worry and judge her when she was building something extraordinary? "She used Grandma's inheritance," Dad said suddenly, his voice barely audible. "Remember, Sarah said she needed it for education and career development. We thought she was wasting it on some questionable online courses." The camera panned to show the CareerBridge office space, a modern facility filled with young professionals working at standing desks and collaboration areas. Computer screens displayed complex data visualizations and algorithm outputs. This wasn't some fly-by-night startup operating from someone's basement. This was a legitimate technology company with real employees and genuine innovation. The software has attracted attention from major corporations seeking more effective recruitment tools, the reporter continued. Industry analysts predict CareerBridge could revolutionize how Americans find employment in the 21st century. I thought about all the conversations we'd had about Sarah's future. All the times Dad had suggested she consider practical careers like nursing or teaching. All the moments Mom had fretted about Sarah's lack of direction and ambition. We'd been measuring her success by our own limited understanding of what career achievement looked like. "She's been lying to us for 2 years, Mom said, but her tone carried hurt rather than anger. 2 years of letting us think she was failing when she was building all this." The interview concluded with Sarah announcing partnerships with 3 major universities and plans to expand into international markets. As the camera zoomed out, I could see the determination in her eyes that I'd always mistaken for stubbornness. She'd been fighting for something bigger than any of us had imagined. The living room fell silent except for the gentle hum of our Christmas tree lights. Outside, snow continued falling past our windows, but inside everything had shifted. Our understanding of Sarah, of success, of family dynamics, had been completely upended in the span of a 10-minute news segment. Just as I was processing this revelation, car doors slammed in our driveway. Through the frosted window, I could see headlights cutting through the evening darkness. Sarah's Toyota Camry sat in the driveway engine, still running exhaust visible in the cold air. The front door opened, and Sarah walked in shaking snow from her dark wool coat. She carried herself with the same confidence I'd just witnessed on television, but her expression showed exhaustion. She'd clearly just returned from something important, probably the investor meeting that had made tonight's news. Sarah froze when she saw her own face still displayed on our television screen. The CNN Chiron read, "Local woman's secret startup success story." Her keys slipped from her fingers, hitting our hardwood floor with a metallic jangle that seemed to echo through the suddenly charged atmosphere of our family home. Sarah stood motionless in our entryway, her coat still dusted with snow, staring at the television screen, where her professional headshot appeared, alongside stock footage of the CareerBridge offices. The silence stretched between us like a taut wire, ready to snap. "So," Dad said, slowly setting down his napkin with deliberate precision, "this is what you've been doing while we've been worrying about your future. You lied to us." Mom's voice carried 2 years of accumulated frustration and embarrassment. "Every Sunday dinner, every phone call asking how the job search was going, you sat there and lied." Sarah finally moved, unzipping her coat with hands that weren't quite steady. "I didn't lie about everything. I was looking for work. I was trying to create work that mattered. By letting us think you were a failure." Dad stood up from the table, his holiday sweater somehow making his disappointment seem more profound. "Do you have any idea what we've been telling the neighbors, your Aunt Patricia? Everyone's been asking about you, and we've been making excuses." I watched Sarah's professional composure crumble slightly. Beneath the successful entrepreneur was still my younger sister, who'd always craved our parents' approval. "You never would have believed in it. Remember when I told you I wanted to start my own business? You said entrepreneurship was too risky, that I should focus on getting a stable job with benefits." "That's different," Mom interjected, moving closer to the television, as if proximity might help her understand better. "We thought you meant some small crafting business or online store, not this, not something worth $50 million. The number hung in the air between us. $50 million. More money than our middle-class Chicago family had ever dreamed of accumulating across multiple generations. Sarah had created more wealth in 2 years than Dad had earned in his entire 30-year career as a high school principal. "I used Grandma's inheritance as seed money," Sarah admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. The $75,000 she left me. I know I should have discussed it with the family, but I needed capital to get started, and I knew you'd try to talk me out of it. Dad's face flushed red. That money was supposed to secure your future, not fund some risky venture. What if you'd lost everything? But I didn't lose everything. I built something that's helping thousands of people find meaningful employment. Sarah's confidence began returning as she spoke about her work. Do you want to know what I've been doing for 18 months? I've been working 100-hour weeks, sleeping on a cot in the office, living on ramen noodles, and coffee, trying to solve problems that traditional job placement services ignore. I found myself caught between admiration for Sarah's achievements and frustration at being kept in the dark. Why couldn't you trust us enough to tell us what you were really doing? I'm your brother. I would have supported you. Sarah looked at me with an expression that mixed gratitude and skepticism. Would you really? When I showed you my initial business plan 2 years ago, you said it sounded complicated and suggested I apply for positions at established companies instead. The memory came flooding back. I had dismissed her ideas as unrealistic, focusing on the technical challenges rather than the potential impact. I'd been as narrow-minded as our parents, measuring success by conventional standards rather than innovation and vision. The software has helped over 15,000 people find employment. Sarah continued, her voice gaining strength. People who'd been unemployed for months, older workers who couldn't get callbacks, recent graduates without experience. We're not just matching resumes to job descriptions. We're identifying potential that traditional hiring processes miss completely. Mom sank back into her chair, overwhelmed by the scope of what Sarah had accomplished while living under our roof, eating our food, and accepting our well-meaning advice about career direction. All this time we thought we were helping you figure out your path, but you'd already found it. The conversation was interrupted by headlights sweeping across our front window. A black BMW pulled into our driveway, parking behind Sarah's modest sedan. Through the frosted glass, I could see someone getting out of the driver's seat, moving with urgent purpose toward our front door. That's Marcus, my business partner, Sarah said, checking her phone and frowning at whatever message she'd received. He's not supposed to be here unless something's wrong. The doorbell rang 3 times in rapid succession, followed by insistent knocking. Sarah hurried to answer it, with the rest of us following close behind. Marcus stood on our front porch, his usual calm demeanor replaced by obvious agitation. He was a tall, lean man in his early 30s, wearing an expensive charcoal gray suit that suggested success, but wrinkled enough to indicate he'd been dealing with crisis management. We have a major problem, Marcus said without preamble, stepping inside and acknowledging our family with a polite but distracted nod. TechFlow Industries launched their platform this afternoon. It's a complete copy of our algorithm. Sarah's face went pale. That's impossible. Our code is proprietary and protected. Not anymore. Someone with inside access leaked everything to Brandon Wright's team. They're calling their platform JobFlow Pro, and it's virtually identical to CareerBridge except for cosmetic interface changes. The weight of this revelation settled over our dining room like a heavy blanket. Sarah had spent 2 years building something revolutionary, only to have it stolen by competitors. The family conflict that had seemed so important moments earlier suddenly felt trivial compared to this existential threat to Sarah's company. How do we know it was an inside leak? I asked my background in computer science, making me curious about the technical aspects of corporate espionage. Marcus pulled out his tablet, showing us side-by-side screenshots of both platforms. The similarities are too specific to be coincidental. They've replicated not just our algorithm logic, but also proprietary features we've never publicly documented. Someone gave them our source code. Sarah was quiet for a long moment, processing the implications. When she spoke, her voice carried a mixture of betrayal and determination. James. It has to be James Patterson, our lead developer. He's the only person outside of Marcus and me who has access to the complete codebase. James Patterson. I felt my stomach drop. Tall guy, reddish hair, always complaining about people who don't deserve their success. You know him? Sarah asked. He was my college roommate. I'm the one who introduced you two at that tech meetup 18 months ago. The revelation that James Patterson, my former roommate and Sarah's trusted lead developer, was likely responsible for the theft hit me like a physical blow. I remembered introducing them at a Chicago tech entrepreneurs meetup, thinking I was helping Sarah connect with talented people who could support her vision. Instead, I'd inadvertently introduced a saboteur into the heart of her operation. Marcus spread several documents across our dining table, transforming our Christmas dinner setup into an impromptu war room. TechFlow Industries filed their patent applications yesterday morning, exactly 6 hours before our CNN interview aired. They're claiming they developed this technology independently. That's legally impossible, Sarah said, scanning through the paperwork. We filed provisional patents 8 months ago and have documented development logs going back nearly 2 years. I studied the screenshots of both platforms on Marcus's tablet. The similarities were undeniable and deeply troubling. JobFlow Pro hadn't just copied CareerBridge's functionality. They'd replicated specific user interface elements that Sarah had spent months perfecting based on user testing and feedback. How long has James had access to the complete system? I asked, already dreading the answer. Since the beginning, Sarah replied, her voice flat, with the realization of how thoroughly she'd been betrayed. I trusted him with everything. Database architecture, algorithm optimization, user interface design, even our business development strategies. Marcus pulled up additional files on his tablet. It gets worse. James has been systematically copying our client communications, investor presentations, and strategic planning documents. TechFlow didn't just steal our technology. They stole our entire business roadmap. Dad leaned forward, his principal's instincts for investigating misconduct kicking in. What kind of person does something like this? Sarah hired him, paid him fairly, gave him opportunities to grow with the company. The kind of person who thinks successful people don't deserve what they've achieved. I said, remembering countless late-night conversations with James during our college years. He always resented classmates who got better grades or landed better internships. He'd find ways to explain why they didn't earn their success. Sarah sat heavily in her chair, the weight of the betrayal clearly affecting her more than the business implications. I defended him when Marcus questioned some of his decisions. I thought he was just being thorough and detail-oriented. I never imagined he was documenting everything to sell to competitors. TechFlow Industries is owned by Brandon Wright. Marcus continued pulling up corporate filings on his laptop. He's got a history of acquiring smaller tech companies, stripping their assets, and launching competing products. This isn't his first time stealing intellectual property from entrepreneurs. The scope of the conspiracy was becoming clearer. This wasn't just about James's personal resentment. It was part of a systematic effort by established corporations to steal innovation from smaller companies that lacked the resources to defend themselves effectively. We need to contact our lawyers immediately, Sarah said, reaching for her phone. If we can prove the theft, we might be able to get an injunction to stop their launch. Already done, Marcus replied. I called Angela Morrison's firm as soon as I discovered the similarities. She's preparing a preliminary injunction request, but she warned me that proving code theft can be technically complex and legally time-consuming. Mom, who had been quietly absorbing this conversation, suddenly spoke up. Can't the police arrest someone for stealing business secrets? Corporate espionage is a federal crime. I explained, but prosecutors usually focus on cases involving national security or massive financial damages. A startup versus an established company might not get priority attention. As if summoned by our conversation, car doors slammed outside again. This time the headlights belonged to James's silver Honda Civic. Through the window I could see him walking toward our front door with an envelope in his hand and an expression of grim determination. What's he doing here? Sarah asked, moving toward the window. Probably serving legal papers, Marcus said darkly. TechFlow's lawyers work fast when they want to intimidate people. The doorbell rang, once followed by official-sounding knocking. I answered the door, coming face to face with someone I'd once considered a friend. James stood on our porch, wearing a black wool coat and carrying a leather briefcase that suggested he'd prepared for this confrontation. "Hello, Zachary. I need to speak with Sarah about some business matters." Business matters. I stepped back, allowing him into our entryway, but positioning myself between him and the rest of my family. "You mean the business you've been systematically destroying?" James's expression remained neutral, but I could see calculation in his eyes. "I'm here to serve Sarah with legal documents regarding intellectual property disputes and ownership claims." "Ownership claims?" Sarah appeared beside me, her voice sharp with incredulity. "You're an employee, James. You signed contracts acknowledging that all work product belongs to CareerBridge Technologies." James opened his briefcase and removed several official-looking documents. "These papers detail my contributions to the core algorithm development. Since I co-created the fundamental technology, I'm claiming equal ownership of the company and demanding immediate dissolution of our partnership agreement." The audacity of his claim left us momentarily speechless. After stealing Sarah's intellectual property and selling it to competitors, James was now attempting to claim ownership of the very company he'd betrayed. "You signed non-disclosure agreements and employment contracts," Marcus said, stepping forward with his own legal documents. "Everything you developed while working for CareerBridge belongs to the company." James smiled coldly. "Employment contracts can be challenged, especially when they're based on fraudulent premises. Sarah misrepresented the company's financial position and growth potential when I was hired." "That's completely false," Sarah shot back. "I showed you our business projections, investor commitments, and development timelines. Everything I promised, we've delivered." "We'll let the courts decide," James replied, holding out the legal papers. "You have 30 days to respond to these ownership claims, or I'll be forced to pursue more aggressive legal remedies." As Sarah reluctantly took the documents, I noticed something in James's expression that went beyond simple legal maneuvering. This felt personal, driven by resentment and jealousy, rather than legitimate business concerns. "Why are you really doing this?" I asked him directly. "Sarah gave you opportunities, treated you fairly, included you in the company's success. Why betray someone who trusted you?" James's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing the bitterness underneath. "Because people like Sarah don't deserve to succeed while others struggle. She got lucky with family connections and inherited money. Real innovators get overlooked while privileged people take credit for collaborative work." "Family connections." Sarah laughed bitterly. "My parents thought I was unemployed until tonight. I've been working alone in a warehouse for 2 years, surviving on savings and determination." "Inherited money." James continued ignoring her response. $75,000 in startup capital that most entrepreneurs could never access. That's how success really works in America. Privilege and connections, not talent and innovation. The conversation was interrupted by his phone buzzing with what appeared to be an urgent text message. James glanced at the screen, and his expression shifted from confident to slightly nervous. "I need to go," he said abruptly, heading toward the door. "My lawyers will be in touch about scheduling depositions for the ownership hearings." But as he reached the door, he turned back with a smile that sent chills down my spine. "Oh, and Sarah Techflow Industries has given me 90 days to completely destroy your company and force you into bankruptcy. Consider this conversation part of that process." James's parting threat hung in the air like poison gas as the front door closed behind him. 90 days to destroy everything Sarah had built. The casual cruelty of his timeline made it clear this wasn't just business competition. It was personal warfare designed to inflict maximum psychological damage. He just confessed to conspiracy. I said, pulling out my phone to check if I'd captured any of his statements on my voice recording app. "Corporate sabotage with a specific timeline and malicious intent." Sarah was reading through the legal documents James had served, her face growing paler with each page. These ownership claims are completely fabricated, but defending against them will cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees. That's probably the real strategy. Marcus was already on his phone with someone speaking in the clipped tones of emergency business communication. Angela, it's Marcus Chen. We need an emergency meeting tonight. James Patterson just served Sarah with fraudulent ownership papers, and he's openly admitted to working with TechFlow Industries to destroy our company. Dad had been quietly observing this entire confrontation, but now his protective instincts kicked in with the force of 3 decades spent defending students against bullies and institutional injustice. Sarah, how much money do you need for legal fees? I've got retirement savings we can use. Dad, I can't take your retirement money, Sarah protested, but her voice carried gratitude for the offer. Yes, you can, Mom interjected firmly. This is our family, and we protect each other. I've been working double shifts at the hospital for 2 years, thinking we needed to save extra money because you were unemployed. Turns out we should have been saving money to help you fight corporate predators. The transformation in our family dynamics was remarkable. Just an hour ago, we'd been arguing about Sarah's deception and career choices. Now we were rallying around her like a military unit preparing for battle. I started pacing around our dining room, my mind racing through everything I knew about James and his technical capabilities. I think I can help with the investigation. My background in digital forensics might be useful for tracking how he copied your data. What kind of evidence would we need? Sarah asked, hope creeping into her voice for the first time since this crisis began. Email communications, file access logs, any documentation of his interactions with TechFlow Industries. If James has been planning this sabotage for months, there will be digital fingerprints. Marcus finished his phone call and rejoined our conversation. Angela Morrison can meet with us tomorrow morning, but she wants us to start documenting everything tonight. Every interaction with James, every suspicious incident, any evidence of his collaboration with competitors. As we began organizing our response strategy, I realized that James had made a critical error by threatening us directly. His arrogance had transformed him from a hidden saboteur into an exposed enemy, and now we could fight back with full knowledge of his intentions. There's something else, Marcus said, pulling up encrypted files on his laptop. I've been suspicious of James for the past 6 weeks. He kept asking questions about our client database and investor communications that went beyond his development responsibilities. You've been investigating him, Sarah asked. Documenting his activities more precisely. I installed monitoring software that tracks all access to our critical systems. James has been copying files he had no legitimate reason to view. Sarah's eyes widened. You have evidence of him stealing our data. Comprehensive documentation going back 2 months. File timestamps, access logs, even screenshots of him copying proprietary algorithms to external drives. The revelation that Marcus had been quietly building a case against James shifted the entire dynamic of our situation. Instead of defending against accusations, we now had the opportunity to launch a counterattack based on documented criminal activity. I felt a surge of protective anger, unlike anything I'd experienced before. This wasn't just about business competition. It was about destroying someone who'd worked honestly and innovatively to create something meaningful. James had calculated that he could steal Sarah's life's work and face no consequences. We need to contact the FBI, I said. Corporate espionage involving interstate commerce is a federal crime. If we can prove James stole intellectual property and sold it to competitors, he's looking at serious prison time. The challenge is proving monetary damages, Marcus explained. Federal prosecutors usually want clear evidence of financial harm exceeding certain thresholds. TechFlow Industries valued the stolen technology at $50 million when they launched their copycat platform, Sarah pointed out. That should meet any threshold requirements. Mom, who had been quietly absorbing the technical and legal aspects of our discussion, suddenly asked a question that cut to the heart of our strategy. What happens to all the people who are using Sarah's software to find jobs If the company gets destroyed, do they lose access to something that's helping them up? The human impact of this corporate warfare hadn't fully occurred to me until that moment. Sarah hadn't just built a profitable business. She'd created a tool that was actively improving people's lives. Destroying CareerBridge would harm thousands of job seekers who depended on its unique algorithm to connect with employment opportunities. That's exactly why we can't let them win, Sarah said, her voice carrying new determination. This isn't about money or personal success anymore. It's about protecting something that's genuinely helping people who've been failed by traditional hiring systems. Our conversation was interrupted by the sound of cars pulling into our driveway again. Through the window, I could see multiple vehicles, including what appeared to be a police cruiser with its emergency lights flashing. "Did someone call the police?" Dad asked, moving towards the window. "I did," Marcus said quietly. "After James's confession, I contacted both local police and the FBI field office. Corporate threats with specific timelines and evidence of data theft constitute criminal activity that requires immediate investigation." As we watched through our front window, law enforcement officers approached our house with the purposeful stride of people conducting official business. Behind them, I could see James sitting in the back of a patrol car, his earlier confidence replaced by the stunned expression of someone whose carefully planned sabotage had collapsed in a matter of hours. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, watching justice unfold in our driveway, "I think our counterattack just became a federal investigation." Detective Lisa Rodriguez and FBI Special Agent David Kim sat in our living room, transforming our Christmas evening into what felt like a crime scene investigation. Sarah had moved her laptop to the coffee table, displaying evidence of James's systematic data theft, while our family gathered around like witnesses to a digital autopsy. Corporate espionage cases can be complex, Agent Kim explained, reviewing the file access logs Marcus had compiled. But this documentation shows clear patterns of unauthorized data copying and external file transfers. I leaned forward to examine the technical evidence more closely. James accessed the core algorithm files every Friday evening for the past 8 weeks, always after normal business hours. He was definitely trying to avoid detection. The timing corresponds with TechFlow Industries' development timeline. Detective Rodriguez added, consulting her notes. According to their patent filings, they claim to have developed identical technology during exactly the same 8-week period. Sarah pulled up additional files showing email communications between James and external contacts. Marcus discovered these encrypted messages yesterday. James was providing weekly updates about our business operations to someone using an anonymous email account. Agent Kim studied the evidence with the focused intensity of someone who'd investigated similar cases before. This pattern suggests a coordinated effort to steal intellectual property over an extended period. It's not opportunistic theft, it's systematic corporate espionage. The scope of the conspiracy was becoming clearer as we presented our evidence. James hadn't simply copied Sarah's algorithm and sold it to competitors. He'd been conducting comprehensive surveillance of CareerBridge technologies, documenting everything from client relationships to expansion strategies. "There's more," Marcus said, accessing encrypted files on his personal laptop. "I've been tracking suspicious activity across multiple Chicago area startups. James Patterson appears to be connected to similar data thefts at 3 other companies." Detective Rodriguez looked up sharply. "Are you suggesting this is part of a larger criminal enterprise?" 5 tech startups in the Chicago area have reported intellectual property theft in the past 18 months, Marcus continued. All of them lost proprietary technology to larger corporations shortly after hiring developers with connections to TechFlow Industries. The revelation that Sarah's company was part of a systematic pattern of corporate predation changed everything about our situation. This wasn't an isolated incident of workplace betrayal. It was organized crime targeting innovative entrepreneurs who lacked the resources to defend themselves effectively. I started connecting the dots between different pieces of information we'd gathered. James specifically mentioned that TechFlow promised him an executive position if he could destroy Sarah's company within 90 days. That suggests they've done this before with specific timelines and rewards for successful sabotage. Agent Kim was taking detailed notes while reviewing the digital evidence. If we can prove a pattern of coordinated intellectual property theft involving multiple companies and systematic destruction of competing businesses, this becomes a federal racketeering case. Racketeering? Dad asked his understanding of corporate crime, limited to what he'd seen in movies and television shows. Organized criminal activity conducted through legitimate business structures, Agent Kim explained. If TechFlow Industries is systematically destroying competitors through theft and sabotage, they're operating a criminal enterprise disguised as corporate competition. The legal implications were staggering. Instead of defending against James's fraudulent ownership, claims Sarah might become a key witness in a federal investigation that could expose widespread corruption in the Chicago technology industry. "What do you need from us to build this case?" Sarah asked her earlier, despair replaced by determination to seek justice not just for herself, but for other victimized entrepreneurs. Complete documentation of all interactions with James Patterson financial records showing business damages and cooperation with our investigation of the other affected companies. Detective Rodriguez replied. Marcus opened additional files on his laptop displaying a network diagram that looked like something from a spy thriller. "I've been informally investigating these connections for months. TechFlow Industries has a pattern of hiring developers as contractors, giving them access to target companies, then launching copycat products within specific timeframes. This is incredibly sophisticated," Agent Kim observed, studying the network analysis. Most corporate espionage cases involve individual employees selling information for personal gain. This appears to be a systematic business model based on organized theft. I realized that my introduction of James to Sarah had inadvertently connected her to a criminal network that specialized in destroying innovative companies. The guilt was overwhelming, but it also motivated me to contribute whatever technical expertise I could to the investigation. "I can help analyze the digital forensics evidence," I offered. "My background in computer science includes cybersecurity and data recovery techniques that might be useful for tracking the stolen information." "We'll need all the technical assistance we can get," Agent Kim replied. "This investigation could involve analyzing communication patterns across multiple companies and tracing how stolen technology moves through legitimate business channels." Our Christmas dinner table had become a command center for what was rapidly escalating into one of the largest corporate espionage investigations in Chicago's recent history. Sarah's personal betrayal had uncovered a criminal enterprise that threatened the entire local startup ecosystem. "What happens to CareerBridge while this investigation proceeds?" Sarah asked, voicing the practical concern that worried me most. "Your company continues operating normally," Detective Rodriguez assured her. "In fact, maintaining business operations helps us monitor any additional attempts at sabotage or interference." Agent Kim closed his notebook and prepared to leave. "We'll need formal statements from everyone who witnessed James's confession tonight. His admission to working with TechFlow Industries on a specific timeline for destroying your company provides crucial evidence for our case." As law enforcement prepared to depart, I noticed news vans pulling up outside our house. Word of the investigation was already spreading, transforming our quiet suburban Christmas into a media spectacle. "One more thing," Agent Kim said as he reached the door. "TechFlow Industries will likely escalate their attacks once they realize we're investigating them. Be prepared for increased legal pressure media campaigns and possibly more direct forms of intimidation." Through our front window, I could see reporters setting up cameras on the sidewalk across from our house. Sarah's story was about to become much larger than a successful entrepreneur fighting corporate theft. It was becoming a symbol of how small businesses could fight back against organized crime. "This is just the beginning," I told Sarah as we watched the news crews prepare their equipment. "But for the first time tonight, I think we're going to win." The media attention following the FBI investigation transformed Sarah from a local entrepreneur into a national symbol of startup resilience. Over the next week, our suburban Chicago home became the unofficial headquarters for what reporters were calling the Career Bridge corporate espionage case. Sarah had made a decision that surprised everyone, including our parents. She rejected TechFlow Industries' $10 million buyout offer that came with a comprehensive non-disclosure agreement. The contract would have solved her immediate legal problems while making her wealthy, but it would have silenced her about the theft and prevented other victims from seeking justice. $10 million would change our entire family's life, Mom said during one of our strategy meetings in the living room that had become our war room. "Are you sure you want to turn down that kind of money?" "I'm sure," Sarah replied, her voice carrying the conviction of someone who'd found a purpose larger than personal gain. "If I take their money and sign their silence agreement, James and TechFlow Industries will continue destroying other entrepreneurs. This isn't just about CareerBridge anymore." I admired Sarah's moral courage, but I also worried about the escalating attacks TechFlow was launching against her reputation and business. They'd hired a public relations firm that specialized in crisis management, flooding social media and business publications with articles questioning Sarah's technical competence and business ethics. Local entrepreneurs' claims, disputed by industry experts. Read one headline from a technology blog that had never covered Chicago startups before this controversy. The article quoted anonymous sources, suggesting that Sarah had exaggerated her company's capabilities and stolen technology from previous employers. "None of this is true," Sarah said, reading through the latest wave of negative coverage on her tablet. "I've never worked for any technology companies. I developed CareerBridge's algorithm completely independently." Marcus had been coordinating with our legal team to counter the misinformation campaign, but the attacks were coming from multiple directions simultaneously. TechFlow is spending serious money on this character assassination. Professional reputation management firms targeted social media campaigns, even coordinated negative reviews of our platform. The psychological warfare was taking its toll on Sarah despite her determination to fight for justice. She'd lost weight from stress and was sleeping poorly, constantly checking her phone for new attacks or legal developments. The personal cost of standing up to corporate predators was becoming evident. "Maybe I should reconsider the buyout offer," Sarah said, during a particularly difficult evening when 3 more negative articles had been published about her company. "The stress is affecting everyone in the family, and I'm not sure individual entrepreneurs can win against this level of coordinated opposition." "Absolutely not," Dad said firmly, surprising all of us with his vehemence. "I've spent 30 years watching bullies pick on students who couldn't defend themselves. The only thing that stops bullies is people willing to fight back no matter how difficult it gets." Our conversation was interrupted by Agent Kim, calling with urgent news about the federal investigation. Sarah put the phone on speaker so we could all hear the developments. "We've arrested Brandon Wright and 3 TechFlow Industries executives on federal racketeering charges," Agent Kim announced. "The evidence you provided led us to a criminal network that's been systematically targeting small technology companies across 5 different states." The relief in the room was palpable. After weeks of escalating legal and public relations, warfare law enforcement had finally taken decisive action against the people orchestrating the attacks. "What does this mean for Sarah's case specifically?" I asked. "All civil lawsuits against CareerBridge Technologies have been suspended pending the criminal investigation," Agent Kim replied. "James Patterson has agreed to cooperate with our prosecution in exchange for reduced charges. He's providing detailed information about how the intellectual property theft network operated." Sarah's hands were shaking as she absorbed this news. Months of stress and uncertainty were finally resolving in her favor, but the emotional toll had been enormous. Techflow Industries is facing asset forfeiture proceedings, Agent Kim continued. Their stolen technology platforms are being shut down, and affected entrepreneurs will be eligible for restitution payments. The scope of justice was broader than we'd imagined possible. Not only was Sarah's company protected, but other victimized entrepreneurs would recover damages from the criminal enterprise that had targeted them. There's one more thing, Agent Kim said. The FBI wants to offer Sarah a consulting contract to help develop better protections for small businesses against corporate espionage. Her case has exposed vulnerabilities in how intellectual property theft is investigated and prosecuted. After hanging up with Agent Kim, our family sat in stunned silence, processing the complete reversal of fortune that had occurred over the past week. Sarah had gone from facing potential bankruptcy and legal destruction to becoming a federal consultant and symbol of entrepreneurial justice. "I still can't believe it's over," Sarah said, looking around our living room that had served as a crisis command center for the most intense week of our lives. "It's not over," I corrected her. "It's just beginning. You've proven that individual entrepreneurs can fight back against organized corporate crime and win. That's going to inspire other people who are facing similar attacks." The doorbell rang, and through our front window I could see a CNN news van parked in our driveway. The same network that had broken the story of Sarah's success was now covering the conclusion of her battle against corporate espionage. "Ready to tell the world how this really ended?" I asked Sarah as she prepared to face the cameras one more time. "More than ready," she replied, her confidence fully restored. "It's time to show other entrepreneurs that they don't have to face these battles alone." As Sarah walked toward the door to meet the reporters, I realized that our family had been fundamentally changed by this experience. We'd learned to support each other's unconventional dreams, to fight for justice, even when it was costly, and to believe in the possibility of individual citizens standing up to powerful institutions and winning. The story that began with family disappointment and deception had become a testament to the power of courage, integrity, and determination in the face of systematic injustice. 1 year after that transformative Christmas dinner, I sat in the CareerBridge Technologies conference room, watching Sarah present quarterly results to our expanded team of 35 employees. The company that had started in a converted warehouse now occupied 3 floors of a downtown Chicago office building, with additional locations planned for Austin and Seattle. Our platform has successfully matched over 75,000 job seekers with employers. Sarah announced to the assembled team, her confidence radiant as she spoke about the impact they'd created together. More importantly, we've maintained an 87% satisfaction rate among both job seekers and hiring managers. I'd joined CareerBridge as head of security and digital forensics, creating systems to protect innovative companies from the kind of intellectual property theft that had nearly destroyed Sarah's dreams. Our security consulting division now worked with over 200 startups across the Midwest, helping them identify and prevent corporate espionage before it could cause damage. Marcus had been promoted to Chief Operating Officer, managing the day-to-day operations that allowed Sarah to focus on strategic development and advocacy work. Their partnership had deepened into something approaching sibling-like trust, forged through the crisis that had tested their commitment to building something meaningful rather than merely profitable. The federal investigation had resulted in convictions for Brandon Wright and 15 other individuals involved in the systematic theft of startup intellectual property. Techflow Industries had been dissolved, with its assets distributed among the entrepreneurs whose ideas had been stolen. Sarah's restitution payment of $12 million had been donated to a legal defense fund for small businesses facing corporate predation. James Patterson received 18 months in federal prison and 5 years of supervised probation. I explained to a group of visiting journalism students who were documenting Sarah's story. More importantly, his cooperation with federal investigators led to the exposure of similar criminal networks in other cities. The personal transformation in our family had been as dramatic as the business success. Our parents now attended every company milestone celebration, having learned to appreciate unconventional paths to achievement. Dad had started volunteering as a mentor for young entrepreneurs, sharing his principled approach to leadership, with people building innovative businesses. Mom had reduced her hospital shifts to part-time, allowing her to serve on CareerBridge's board of directors and contribute her healthcare expertise to our employee wellness programs. The woman who had worried about Sarah's unemployment was now helping design benefits packages for a rapidly growing technology company. The most important lesson from this experience, Sarah told the journalism students, is that success isn't about avoiding failure or conflict. It's about having the courage to pursue your vision even when others doubt you, the integrity to do what's right, even when it's costly, and the wisdom to accept help from people who love you. The holiday season had become a celebration rather than a source of family tension. Our Christmas dinners now included CareerBridge employees, FBI agents, who had worked on the case, and entrepreneurs from other companies who had benefited from our advocacy efforts. What had started as a nuclear family struggling with judgment and disappointment had expanded into a chosen family, united by shared values and mutual support. Zachary's introduction of James to our team was actually a blessing in disguise. Sarah continued glancing at me with the forgiveness that had taken months for me to accept. Without that betrayal, we never would have uncovered the broader criminal network that was targeting innovative companies throughout the region. The ripple effects of our experience continued expanding in ways we hadn't anticipated. Sarah had testified before Congress about the need for stronger intellectual property protections for small businesses. Our security consulting work had prevented dozens of similar theft attempts. Most significantly, the CareerBridge platform had evolved into something larger than job matching. It had become a tool for identifying and nurturing innovative potential in people who had been overlooked by traditional systems. We've learned that the most dangerous threats to innovation don't come from technical challenges or market competition. I explained to the students. They come from people and institutions that profit from maintaining unfair advantages and suppressing creative disruption. The legal precedents established by our case had strengthened federal prosecution of corporate espionage, making it riskier and more expensive for established companies to steal from entrepreneurs. Sarah's decision to reject the buyout and fight for justice had created protections that would benefit future generations of innovators. As the interview concluded and the students prepared to leave, one young woman asked a question that captured the essence of what we'd learned. What would you tell someone who's facing a similar situation where powerful people are trying to destroy something they've built? Sarah considered the question carefully before responding. Remember that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision to do what's right despite being afraid. Surround yourself with people who share your values rather than just your interests. And never underestimate the power of individual citizens to stand up to institutional injustice and create lasting change. The conference room gradually emptied as employees returned to their work of connecting job seekers with meaningful employment opportunities. Sarah and I remained behind, looking out the floor-to-ceiling windows at the Chicago skyline, where other entrepreneurs were undoubtedly facing their own challenges and pursuing their own visions. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I'd taken that buyout offer?" Sarah asked. "I know what would have happened," I replied. James and TechFlow would have continued destroying other people's dreams while counting their profits. Sometimes the most important success isn't measured in dollars, it's measured in the positive change you create for others. The sun was setting over Lake Michigan, casting golden light across our office space, filled with people working to solve problems that traditional institutions had ignored. Sarah's journey from unemployed disappointment to successful entrepreneur had become something larger. a demonstration that individual integrity and determination could challenge systematic injustice and win. As we prepared to leave for another family dinner, this time celebrating our cousin's engagement, I realized that the most profound lesson from our experience wasn't about business or technology. It was about the transformative power of supporting each other's unconventional dreams, fighting for justice even when the odds seem impossible, and maintaining faith in the possibility that ordinary people can create extraordinary change. The Career Bridge story had begun with family disappointment and corporate betrayal, but it had evolved into something that gave hope to entrepreneurs facing similar challenges. Sarah's platform continued connecting thousands of people with meaningful work, while our security consulting protected innovative companies from predatory theft. Most importantly, we'd learned that true success comes not from avoiding conflict or taking the easy path, but from having the courage to stand up for what's right. The wisdom to accept help from those who love you, and the determination to create positive change that extends far beyond personal benefit. The Christmas dinner that had started with judgment and disappointment had become the foundation for a family business dedicated to protecting innovation and creating opportunities for people whose potential had been overlooked by traditional systems. Our story proved that sometimes the most devastating betrayals can become the catalyst for the most meaningful victories. What challenges are you facing in your own life, where standing up for what's right might create positive change beyond your personal situation? Have you ever had to choose between taking an easy path that benefits only you versus fighting for justice that helps others? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button to help other people discover the importance of supporting unconventional dreams and fighting corporate injustice. Subscribe to hear more stories about ordinary people who create extraordinary change through courage and determination. And share this with someone who might need encouragement to pursue their own innovative vision despite facing doubt or opposition. Thank you for joining me on this journey of family transformation, entrepreneurial justice, and the power of individual citizens to challenge institutional corruption. Remember that your unique ideas and unconventional dreams have the potential to create positive change that extends far beyond what you can currently imagine. Keep fighting for what's right, accepting help from those who love you, and believing in the possibility that one person's courage can inspire others to stand up for justice and innovation. Until next time, may your holidays be filled with the kind of support and understanding that transforms family disappointments into shared victories for justice and meaningful success.